Wicked. Brrr, here we are once again, living life in the flow zone. Ryan Simbai Jenkins joining us from Barcelona. Cognitive hypnotherapist, NLP master practitioner, insight coach, bassist. What else? Is that all accurate? Did I get all that?
Yeah, you got those words in the right order.
Excellent. Good to have you here, brother. Nice to see you in person.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much.
I know it's must be bright and early.
Opportunity.
I appreciate you jumping up bright and early to join us.
No worries. Not a problem at all.
Awesome. Do you have a morning routine, or do you have like a set routine that you do in the morning, like a wake up kind of ritual or anything like that?
Yeah, I have a first thing that I do is have a big black coffee, cup of coffee, and wake my ass up, and then I usually practice meditation, Vipassana meditation for half an hour to an hour. And that's sort of my thing. If I have a really, really busy day, or if I have a lot of things going on, one thing that I do is I do 10 minutes of self-hypnosis practice. And there's a specific type of practice to practice the day, sort of in my head, lots of moving parts, and sort of have the best intention. And gratitude practice of just blessing everything in my life, and sort of doing that, having that intention.
Beautiful. Does that? I'm curious. There's a few questions that come up as you mentioned all of that. I'm going to try to break that down a little bit, if that's okay. So you wake up immediately. Your thought is coffee. Is that the immediate? All right, make my coffee. That's automatic now, or?
Yeah, so I mean, I connect. A lot of people have this connection with coffee that it's like something unhealthy, or it's somehow not good for you. And actually, for me, it's about lucidity and clarity, and it's very much a meditation. It's not a meditation tool, but I associate it with, a clear mind. And so I make a cup of good Papua New Guinean coffee. I have a place here that roasts good quality coffee from the country that I was born, which is Papua New Guinea.
Taking it back to your roots.
It's like taking me back to my roots, and it anchors me. And this is my thing. And then I generally don't eat breakfast because I do intermittent fasting. So I'm basically running on an empty stomach and coffee until lunchtime. And
does that mean you're running
on
ketones? Are you in ketosis most of the time, or?
Yeah, it's slight ketosis.
Yeah, cool. So it's like coffee, and then what? You finish the coffee, or you have a little bit of it, and then you go and sit? Is it seated meditation? I'm imagining with Vipassana, and you're just scanning the body, or?
Scanning the body, or doing a noting technique, and yeah, just kind of developing my awareness, developing equanimity, which is sort of mental balance. You can think of it, and then on to the day. I'm seeing clients in my hypnotherapy practice. I have a therapy practice where I see one-to-one clients, and then I see people. I work with people online as well.
Awesome.
So, and then that's my thing. And I practice. I try to find some time during the day to
play the bass. Beautiful. And to just break down Vipassana for it, because it's interesting. I've done a few of these episodes, and I'm an avid Vipassana practitioner myself. And it's interesting that this topic hasn't really come up in any of my podcasts yet. So I'm curious to get other people's insight onto their experience of Vipassana. So let's just break it down for people who don't have any idea what that is, or who've heard about it but don't quite, have a first-hand experience of it.
Okay, cool. So, I had a lot of different types of meditation experiences before I started this studying this particular technique. So I tried transcendental meditation. I'd done that for many years, and it just didn't seem to. It had to take you into a nice feeling, and you got into this nice flow, but it didn't seem to be really taking me deeper, and so I started studying mindfulness, sort of Zen style meditation. That was nice, but it still wasn't taking me, my experience, into where I wanted to go. And then basically I took a retreat, a 10-day retreat, and you can do these all over the world. And basically
I'd call it more a course than a retreat. When people think of it as a retreat, it sounds easy.
Right. It's not like the kind of retreats it's like a detox, sit on your butt and eat like nice. Well, actually, you do kind of sit on your ass and eat nice.
You do sit. It's pretty much.
It's so essentially there's Vipassana is insight meditation, and Vipassana in the Pali language, essentially translates to seeing clearly. And so the historical Buddha was, apart from being a master meditation teacher and a spiritual leader, was a master cognitive psychologist as well. And so he understood the nature, not only the nature of reality, but really had an insight in the nature of human psychology. And basically he taught a technique which is all about getting into the fine experience of yourself, an individual human experience, and not overlaid with concepts, not overlaid with mixed emotions. And basically he taught this technique, and so many different techniques, but the Vipassana technique is designed to actually get you in touch with your moment by moment, visceral, clear, lived experience as it's occurring in the present moment. And so what that does is you begin to pick apart your experience. So, you see things as they are. They don't mix. What you see your inner visual. So you basically have a movie center, a 3D movie center in your mind. And it's incredible. It's an incredible thing. But when you're not aware of it,
each moment is just flickering.
Yeah. Everything. Exactly. And it's there. And most people, the majority of people, are going through life and they just have no clue that there's this massive special effects center, in their head, and think, this is me, this is my life, and here we go. And so when you put aside some time every day to allow yourself to see this and experience this directly, what happens is that you become aware of the fact that there are these different pieces to your experience. So there is a visual sense, there's a felt sense, there's an emotional felt sense, which is different from a physical felt sense. There's external hearing, and there's also an internal hearing with all of the sound, your sounds, and so essentially
temperature.
you're not looking to change
spatial and
your temperature,
time, and
oh yeah, all this crazy stuff, right? Which is always going on, which makes your human experience. And so when you sit, it's really taking a stand for truth, for your own truth, and for truth with a capital T, because you're actually saying, look, let me see what's actually going on. I'm not gonna just take your word for it. I'm going to make an effort. and to look deeply. And so what happens is you can learn this technique, and even though it comes from the Buddhist tradition, it doesn't have anything to do specifically with Buddhism if you don't want it to. And it's not, if you go to one of these courses, there's a lot of sort of benevolent indoctrination, where they teach you about Dharma, and that's and the truth of the world as they see it. But it's up to you to actually check it out for yourself and to see whether it's true. So there is a scientific element to it where you're actually experimenting and you're looking and you're using your own attention and your own awareness as a scientific tool. It can be very rational, and you're actually seeing like what's going on. And so I took this course in I'm trying to remember when was this was many years ago, and it had a profound effect on my life. A 10-day retreat. I had already been meditating for many years. But this particular time, I think it was around the third day, I was seated and I was having a hard time. So I was having a rough.
It's day 4 that you get Vipassana, right? So the first 3 days you would have just been breathing with the Anapana technique, correct?
Right. Exactly. So this was right after they had given the Vipassana technique, right? So I had been training my focus. And I'd gotten to like micro level, Superman focus, I'm like, this is good. I'm like on, I'm very focused. Bruce Lee, and so they give me this technique, which is essentially scanning your body, and this is the particularity to this style of Vipassana, which is the Burmese Gwenka technique from and then apparently this is the technique, one of the original techniques that Buddha taught, the historical Buddha taught, and then was kept in sort of perpetuity in Burma, throughout the many years and the cycles of Buddhism, so the different stages of the evolution. And so what happened was that I got into this super flow state where my attention, at some point it seemed like I was moving my attention. There was a me moving the attention through my body. And then suddenly it just was happening by itself, and there wasn't a me there. It was just going on. And actually what happened in just the moment before that was I was feeling like I had the worst hangover you could ever imagine. And I felt I was like something was going to come up. Was this belching of a kind of emotional thing? I didn't know what it was. And
wow.
I'm like, what the hell, man? And I'm just going to keep on going. I'm just going to follow the instructions. I'm going to keep on going because there's a little bit of time left. And, but this is really uncomfortable. How could you do this, to yourself? And in one moment I had a vision, and I had a hallucination because I had like one of the trippiest things I've ever had. And it was a vision of this little demon that was being ripped from my neurology. So it was my unconscious mind actually showing me some sort of healing, but being ripped. And then I started crying, and I started just bawling like a little baby. No why. And after that session, I went outside and I walked around in the garden. There's this garden in this retreat center, and I felt so light, and I felt so good, and there was a sadness, but the sadness was a sadness of release. It was a really powerful experience, and then subsequent days were much easier. I was much more focused, much more, in it, and that experience actually was one of the experiences that precipitated me into learning techniques to actually help healing, and so help other people, and sort of go on this particular path. And from in a psychological standpoint, in hypnotherapy, what happened is called an abreaction. So it's something that if you practice hypnotherapy,
so you were practicing before you went to and did your first Vipassana course, or you were practicing hypnosis afterwards?
So I was, let's see. No, I wasn't a trained hypnotherapist. I hadn't done any training, but I had done an NLP course, I believe, or I had done.
So you're familiar with the workings of the mind and the neurology and the linguistics that go on and all of this kind of. You had an interest.
I had an interest, let's say, at that moment. It wasn't something that
wasn't brand new.
It was something that I did brand new. I was using it. I think I was using some of the things with my students, because at that moment I was teaching bass, and I had an interest in performance. So anything that has to do with being better, getting better,
enhancement,
enhancement. If you could take bass steroids, I probably would have taken them.
Amazing.
And I was extremely focused. And that's one story that
well, that's
really,
what it is. That's what the flow and meditation and mindfulness and presence. I believe it is the limitless drug. People are talking about limitless, and I believe that presence practice, mindfulness, being here now, paying attention to what is currently going on. I believe this is the magic pill. I believe this is the limitless drug, which allows you to operate at levels unforeseen, unforetold, like unbelievable, create miracles, this type of stuff. I believe that, from witnessing myself and from all the students and clients I've worked with who practice this stuff, they go from this level to this level, and this level is like normal level. I believe this is quite normal. It's we get jam-packed with life, and we don't feed ourselves in terms of, we feed our bodies, we feed our minds, but we don't feed our souls, which I believe mindfulness, presence, practice is a type of soul food. It's how our souls get nourishment, and that allows us to actually be balanced and operate at our level, which I believe is higher. So in a way, I think it is steroids for learning. It is steroids for operating at a high level.
Yeah. Sure. And it's also, I also believe that it's our natural state.
Yeah.
After a lot of practice and a lot of understanding and delving into some areas that's beyond thinking, or different, better ways of thinking, or new ways of thinking, or snazzy branded ways of thinking, or whatever, that essentially, and you said it very well, that's actually our normal. Our normal is connectedness,
clarity.
Our normal is clarity and focus, and now intuition, flow, all of that. Flow is natural. I never see my cat when she's not in flow, even when she's tripping and falling and knocking shit over.
Right, always poised, always ready to react to the moment. Respond to the moment, right?
And so I've seen it in my life. I've seen it in clients' lives, and I get caught. Yeah. I'm not. I don't profess to be a guru or but I get caught by my thinking, and I get caught by this misunderstanding about how life works. And perhaps that's the most important thing, because beyond any technique, beyond any healing modality is, or whatever you want to do, whether it's cognitive therapy, whether it's psychotherapy, whether it's qigong, whether it's whatever it is,
whether it's yoga, whether it's painting, playing music, dancing, whatever it might be. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Is your experience, your human experience, your clarity, and your who you are is beyond all of that, beyond anything that you can think.
You mentioned something earlier which caught my attention. If will you finish that thought before I go interrupting?
Sure. No, that's that. Go ahead.
So you mentioned something. I can't remember exactly what you said, but you said something along the lines of it gives you an understanding, or there was no self. You reach this level of, it was just in flow, and you were observing. There was a you, and then there was a no you. There was like this non-dual experience where there wasn't an other me and a that. It was just an experience and an observation of it, and a feeling or experience. Can you speak on the idea of self? I had an interesting concept come up recently talking about self, and is there like a little s self or a big s self? And this concept intrigues me, and when I start thinking about it, and I start thinking about it becomes quite intriguing to riff on. So I'd love to hear what your experience of that is, and if you can speak on that.
Sure. So, and you hit on it there. Words and language is all that we have to describe a seeming thing that we're describing. And I say seeming because once you really sit down and you spend some time going into a practice or deep inquiry, you realize that it's not a static thing. Your self is changing. Your mind is changing. Flow is the natural state. It's not just flow as the flow, but all nature is in flux. And our minds are in flux. And so the nature of the self, in Buddhism, there's a concept called anatta, which is no self. And this is one of the great sort of awakenings of the Buddha, or understandings, that is a cornerstone. And basically, he sat down and with the power of his perception and clarity, came to the understanding, the realization that there is no fixed self. And modern neurology agrees with that particular statement. There's modern neuroscience has verified that statement to a degree. So essentially, when we walk through our day and we go, oh, this is me in the office, and this is me talking to my friend Jack, and this is me being a father or a musician or a lover or whatever it is, or being an asshole, or being whatever. There are these different permutations of this thing called self. And what happens is that we get rigidly stuck in a particular perception of ourselves. And that becomes such an easy thing to do when you don't have the insights to support your life. And so essentially, we start believing things that aren't real. We get you ever seen those what was that cartoon? I forget what it was. It was Ice Age.
Yes.
and where this that little creature, kind of meerkat or whatever it was, runs and then flies through the air and then gets and gets stuck in
Is that the rat?
in
What is
the
that? A rat?
ice. The rat.
With the nut?
I don't know what that
I
is.
can't remember. I
With the
mix up.
nut. Yeah, exactly.
I mix up Madagascar and Ice Age and all that stuff. Happy Feet. I mix them all up.
Happy feet. Yeah, yeah. Um, and so yeah, and that and it kind of gets stuck in that ice thing. And so we do that with ourselves. We do that when we believe that we are these stuck, fixed personalities, and we
As in,
go
it's like
through life.
I'm happy, or I'm this. When we say I am, and then say whatever state it is that is happening. I'm depressed. I'm excited, or I say I
I'm
am
depressed. Exactly, and it's so tricky. It's so tricky. And so the idea of using meditation, or at least insight, or your focus, or inquiry, is that you pick that apart bit by bit. It's like stranding a shoelace. One of the greatest things I ever learned as a bass player, as a professional musician many years ago, was not how to play the instrument. It was actually to untangle chords. When all your chords get stuck together,
I know all about it.
and it's like it's like some crazy law of physics of when chords are on the floor, they will tangle into this mass. And it's a real skill to be able to sit there and unpick and know where things go. And so essentially, meditation and authentic spiritual practice for me is untangling yourself. Is learning how to untangle these deep-seated understandings or deep-seated beliefs or misunderstandings. And that misunderstanding really comes down to you're a fixed self. That is, and that's not true. That's simply not true. So as you say, when you say I am, in a way, I am a person that finds it hard to speak to people, or I am a person that really, I'm bad with money, or
I'm no good with names.
I can't do this. I'm no good with names. I'm yeah, exactly. And your deeper mind actually begins to accept that as a suggestion. It's a self-suggestion. Your unconscious mind, your subconscious, your inner mind, if you will, accepts that. The deeper part of you goes, all right, this is how you want to play it. We'll give you that, and so you can have this experience of flow that it's not that there is an observer and there is an experience. It's all just experience. And that self falls away. And, a lot of people look for that kind of experience actually, we're all looking for that experience. It's in children have it, at a very young age, it's called the oceanic experience. And basically, it's a stage of development where they're just in that flow state. And then as you grow up and you grow into these personality constructs, you very much get fixed. So you learn ways of getting what you want in life, and then you try different ways, and then it doesn't work. You're trying to get candy from mom or whatever, and you try like being like pissed off, and that doesn't work, and you try being cute, and that works, and then suddenly little Johnny is cute, and mom says, look, he's being cute again, give him candy, and you get rewarded by your outside world, and you essentially get tricked that what you really want is from the outside. It's from the outside in. And actually, all experience is being created from the inside out. And it's so simple. But we get trained by our environment and by this misunderstanding into that particular fixed idea. So if anybody were to take anything away from this, this conversation, I think, it would be really, really useful for you to begin to question the validity of certain assumptions that you may have about yourself, because that self that you're questioning is changing, is shifting, is always learning. And so hypnotherapy, for example, and some techniques are very, very, very powerful ways of, let's say, interacting or shaping or designing, if you want to use those words, your experience of self. And so certain people really benefit from certain types of practices, benefit from certain types of techniques that allow them to see themselves in more empowering ways. You could say it like that. And also to see themselves as they are also.
And to
not empowering ways, or simply how things are.
How they turn up. Which, yeah, it's definitely beneficial. I was curious, touching on that, like the takeaways that people can have. I'd imagine that some of these things, little Johnny's cute. All right, cool, I'm cute. And I imagine that these types of experiences, whether whether it's in the womb or beyond the womb, in the outside world, there's stuff going on at the young age, whether it's 0 to 2, 0 to 5, these formative years, 0 to 25 even, or like in the time, and then living life outwardly, or then from then on, once these conditionings come in and we have these ideas that we decide consciously, and they go back into the subconscious or unconscious mind. And I don't believe in unconscious, like they just go deeper into like a really solid idea of before the prefrontal lobe. Ideas of who we are and how we are and what we deserve and all this stuff. I imagine I just don't imagine, I see it. I've experienced it with many and many of my clients and people I work with. I imagine, and I know that it causes a lot of problems going forward with people wanting, desiring outcomes, wanting to create a life where they are experiencing one thing, but they're getting another because there's these patterns at play, or these beliefs at play under the conscious awareness. And people are deciding things that are more powerful than the so-called I want this, the current desire. Oh, I want to be more wealthy. I want to create more, I want to be rich. I want to be a more loving person, being more in touch with my emotions, whatever it is. I imagine that can cause a lot of issues going forward. Can you give us your experience with working with people and how some of these concepts we're talking about can, take them from this kind of disempowered, or this kind of, I can't really create the changes I want to make, and then going, actually, now that there's this understanding, I can actually take control and be a conscious curator of what I actually do want.
Yeah, so when we come up against this disconnect between our ideas of how reality works and the way that it actually works, this misunderstanding, there's a resistance that is naturally created, because you're kind of, it's like when Pac-Man hits that wall, or it's like I'm trying to get forward, but and so what happens is so it's really basic formula. It's pain plus resistance equals suffering. And seeing things as they are releases that resistance. So you only have the experience of the pain that you're experiencing in the moment. It's 1 unit of pain. 1 unit of pain is just 1 unit of pain. 1 unit of pain plus resistance is like many multiple times, and then that's what it's and so when it comes to creation and real deep creating, creating what you want, So I have this belief that if it's been done, if something's been done, you can no longer say it's impossible.
Right.
You know, if somebody's done it, you're no. You know, look, some things are absolutely impossible. Like we've been able to go to the moon. Like that's if you don't believe in conspiracy. But I'm not going to like jump out of my window and start flapping my, hands and saying like that's gonna work. Like there's a process, but it's possible. So if that's what you want to do, and that is your deep desire, and you want to work towards that, hey, far be it for me to stop you. But it's knowing what our genuine goals are for ourselves based on what our deeper self really wants. And so when it comes to creating something in our lives that is really, it's really the thing that will really make us happy and content and fulfilled. Because, as people go through life and they create more, one of the things that happens is your more becomes your normal. So I've got $1 million. Wow, yay. So what? You don't have to worry about putting food on your table. You've got to work on making the next one because it's your normal, and then that grows. And what happens is this thing called hedonic adaptation. So essentially, if you're focused on pleasures, fleeting experiences, even the greatest holiday or the most amazing meal, or the most incredible experience, physical experience, whatever that may be, or even a spiritual experience, even looking for the next enlightenment. We all see these sort of spiritual people that are like spiritual elitists or looking for the next sort of thing. And it all comes down to the same thing. Is what you're looking for is a deeper experience of yourself. You're looking for that loss of that self that is looking, and finding, So if you're always looking, you're never going to be finding. And so what I say is, if you want something, or you want to do something, you want to have something, when it comes to, like, for example, music or creating or learning a skill, is time spent doing it in a focused way is going to get you there. So 60 seconds spent really focused on something is 60 seconds in your direction. Not saying, I want to be rich, but you're spending time in that direction. Boom. There's no out, and so whatever it is, if it's one push-up, if it's, if it's whatever it is, and then you're moving in that direction. And, it's like taking those little drops and you're placing it and you're moving in that direction. And eventually, you will get there. And if you don't get there, as if there's a there to get, you will have enjoyed your experience. And so there's a lot of people, and even in the coaching sort of industry, and talk about getting rich and get rich quick and all this stuff. And I'm more about an easy way of, like, create from wholeness, create from that place of knowing you're okay, and then choosing those things that are most aligned with what you want to create, and also realize we're human. We all, every single one of us. I haven't met one, and I've been fortunate enough to know and meet some pretty enlightened cats, and some really great guys. And everybody has their stuff to process in their life, their life dharma, or whatever you want to call it, and dealing with life, because you're human. And so if you get knocked down, or if you find yourself in a situation that it's difficult, it's not useful to beat yourself up. When has it ever been useful? And so it's really a matter of taking stock, sitting down, saying things as they are, and moving forward in a way that, you know, makes sense for yourself and everyone else.
And that's there's a few things you said there that that caught my attention. It was beautiful that if you're always looking, you'll never be finding. I love that. That's absolutely gold right there. And the other one was just that you just mentioned there that if you have this, sorry, I've just lost my train of thought there. What were you just touching on then, just 1 second ago, before I started talking?
Let me see. I was in the flow, so
yeah, I know, right? Remember. I know. It's totally just.
I think I was touching on creating from a sense of wholeness.
Beating yourself up. Okay, so that's I got it. So it was this idea how insidious the mind is, and we can be filling our minds with positive thoughts and thinking about what we want to create, as opposed to not what we don't want to create. And there's this kind of ideas, you know, this self-flagellation, as you're talking about, beating yourself up. When has beating yourself up got us anywhere? And you know, that this kind of ideas that run very, very quietly and stealthily under the awareness that are running. So it's we can be like, no, I'm not the kind of person that beats myself up. I am this kind of person. And then, but it's running there deep somewhere. It's on play. And if you listen, you can catch it. And the importance of seeing things as they are, I'm curious to know what life has been like for you, and also if anyone that you work with, if you've shared with them these practices and they've been diligent in their practice, how life is different because you know, ignorance is bliss, they say. So it's like, oh, you don't even realize that this stuff is on play, but I'm thoroughly enjoying myself. But on a deeper level, maybe the experience isn't as, I don't know, fulfilling, or it isn't as real, or, you know, like tangible and actual, like alive as it might be able to be. But so I'm curious to know the difference between like what life is like when you're living in this idea of what I think it is, or what I've been told the experience is, as opposed to living life in I'm actually experiencing, and this feels like real life and I'm engaged with it. I'm interested to know your experience, and if you've seen with your own eyes people learn these techniques and principles and apply them, and how life has shifted for them.
So in my life, there was a real sort of before and after moment. One sort of moment, and this was some years ago. I was living in Holland, in the Netherlands, and I was studying music at the Rotterdam Conservatory. A great institution, and lots of amazing musicians and dancers, and really amazing place. And I was studying bass, performance, and my mom had passed away the year before, or maybe 6 months before, and I'd taken the decision to go back to school. She passed away in Thailand, and she was living there, and we packed up the house, and I said, look, I'm going back to Europe. And there was a musical calling. There was a bit of a spiritual experience.
Wow, that's incredible. She must have been young.
She was, and she was also a incredible person, incredible Carol Jenkins. She was an anthropologist. She discovered a tribe that was living in the Stone Age in Papua New Guinea, and so we grew up in New Guinea. And there's a National Geographic documentary. You can watch it. I can give you the link.
That's incredible. Definitely give us the link and share that for sure.
it's a really cool, rare documentary. You can see her work and my family's work there. And then, so we lived in a lot of different countries, lived in 9 countries. She basically worked in health, and she helped people devise their HIV programs to fight AIDS. And basically, she well loved and amazing woman. And so I lost both of my parents actually.
Wow.
In 2 years. And I was, I was hurting, and I wasn't taking care of my body. I wasn't taking care of my health. But I said, look, music has always been my guiding light. It's been my North Star. I was on a beach in Thailand, actually, and taking a break before I went back, kind of deciding what I was going to do with my life. And one day I was meditating, actually, in this room. And I was meditating in this small resort, sort of this little room on the beach, and I heard this voice, go for a walk, take a walk. And I kind of walked up, and I went, and I was walking, and I was working, and I heard this music playing, this live band jamming. It was in a tattoo shop. And I walked in, and I opened the door, and there were these guys jamming, and there literally was a chair with a bass guitar with the amp turned on and an empty chair.
Get the fuck out of here.
I'm telling you.
Get out of here.
And I was like, hey guys.
That's bullshit.
It's true, I swear. And I sat down, and these guys, showed me their love, and we were playing, and so this week these guys took care of me. And it's a sad story, their bass player had died in a motorbike accident the week before.
Wow.
And it's just crazy synchronicity, and so they gave me this tattoo, and they were like, you got to go and play music. And,
what tattoo? Show us.
And so they gave me this.
What tattoo?
I have. Yeah, well, this is the most recent one.
That's
my flow.
That's the flow. That's the Zen symbol, the Tao. Lord. Yeah, got it. So that was like on the spot. You just bam.
Yeah.
So that was like on the spot. You just got it like there, then.
On the spot. Yeah, it was my own Thai tattoo. Yeah. Anyway, so basically, I went back to music school, and I said, look, I'm going to make this happen. And I got really, really strict with myself. I was meditating every day. I was kind of like, okay, we're going to make this happen. And I was in like 5 different bands. I was like in a klezmer band, a funk band, doing like breakbeat, was in ensembles, and then making electronic music, and I was like, and basically, I failed an exam. I failed a sight reading exam for the conservatory, and I was beating myself up a lot. And so one it was the Queen's Day weekend, which is one of those, which is in Holland, is it's the day that they celebrate the birthday of the Queen, and it's basically party central.
It's party time.
And everybody's out having party time. And so I was actually in a studio recording in Amsterdam, recording some music. It was late. I hadn't slept for.
And they get wild.
I hadn't had a good sleep
in Amsterdam, right? They know how to party in Amsterdam.
They do.
They don't mess around there.
And yeah, they take it professionally, like. And I injured my hand. I had an injury on my finger in that moment.
So you just fast forwarded through the party time, and you just went, through the party time I injured myself. Is that what just happened?
Well, I wasn't partying as much as I was around people that were doing a lot of. I was in a studio making electronic music.
So you injured your hand in the studio.
Take that as you. In the studio playing, I was doing a studio session. Actually, I was working that weekend, and I was like, oh shit, like I can't play anymore. I can't do what I'm here to do and meant to do, and all these ideas about who I am, and oh fuck, and I was rigidly set to being a musician. My identity was a musician. I'm like meant to play music. This is, you know, who I am.
It was a calling. It was a calling. A voice told me. It was like it has to be.
Yeah, you know that voice. You know, and all the synchronicities, and now I can't do what I'm meant to do, and life's over. You know, and so basically I had to step out of the conservatory and find a solution to this thing. So I came to Barcelona to actually go to a center, rehab center, which worked with musicians, and not rehab but rehabilitation.
So you fucked it up good. It wasn't a muscle injury. It was serious stuff.
I fucked it up. I fucked it up. And lots of, you know, therapy and lots of money later. It still hadn't.
How is it now? Is it back to full?
I can play and I do my thing, you know, so it works. But to get to that point, I learned self-hypnosis, and I learned...
You learned that at the rehab center, or you learned that outside just through your own YouTube type?
You got it. It's through YouTube. I learned self-hypnosis, and I began to actually relax and learn how to relax and trigger the relaxation response and go deeper. And you know, I'd had several experiences. You know, I'd kept on meditating. I'd been meditating. And I had several of these no-self experiences, these awakening, very, very powerful spiritual experiences. But I didn't know where to put them. I didn't know what. I was kind of like sitting on my couch going, God, this feels good, but what am I doing with my life? You know?
That's the old you know, navel gazing. You know, one of the negative, you know, the shadow aspects of meditation. You know, that's, you know, just sitting there gazing at the navel. But what about the rest of the world that goes on? And you know, the cutting the trees, the collecting wood, the carrying water. You know.
Absolutely. And I said, what is my purpose? And in this moment, you know, I couldn't do music. I couldn't do whatever. And so I started studying, you know, healing myself, you know, heal thyself. So I worked on that, and I healed my hand, and I healed my condition, or my condition was healed, however you want to put it. And so what happened was that I wanted to work with people. I wanted to work with individuals. I really wanted to connect with people one-to-one. And I started studying everything I could find. I devoured thousands of books. Oh yeah, like Pac-Man, you know. And I went on courses, and hypnotherapy courses, and NLP courses, and master practitioner, and I did, you know, as much as I could, and really got into it. And I also met a guy, you know, online, a guy named Jamie Smart.
Hey, shout out to Jamie Smart. He'll be joining us soon for one of these.
Oh, cool!
Have a chat with us.
He's one of my favorite people in the world.
Yeah, he's a great guy,
and
love Jamie.
He's a great. And so I started, you know, also getting into, you know, his direction with 3 principles, which is basically, and I'm sure he'll talk about that. And I started, you know, having a much more profound experience of my life. A lot of things, even in personal development, that had worked for me no longer made sense.
Such as, give us an example.
Okay, so for example, in NLP, one of the techniques that they use in coaching is a timeline technique, which is basically visualizing your goals in the future, and kind of having you work through your goals and or you know, and what I realized, you know, goals are really, really important, but this idea of fixed timelines and putting yourself always in the future actually gets you on this hamster wheel, you know, that actually takes you out of the present moment and takes you out of the source of where you're wanting to go. Actually, you're trying to get here by getting there, and you get knocked into this strange thing. And so people that teach the timeline technique as if it's, or things like that, really miss the point of the journey. And
I'll be happy when.
For me, it's
the I'll be happy when trap.
I'll be happy. You got it. And we all do that. And that's all part of the misunderstanding. So we all have some part of our experience it's like mystical, mystique, you know, we don't really understand how it works. And it's like some aspects of our life that it's like, so I'm just going to do something. It's superstition, you know. I'm going to throw the magic at it and see what happens, you know. And we usually suffer. I know in my case I suffer. Like,
totally.
You know, hardcore.
I shouldn't laugh so evilly at suffering, but I'm just laughing at myself. It's so true. It's like, yep, that's bad.
Recognition, yeah. It's a laugh of recognition. I recognize that. And so for what works for my clients, and so I study this, and one of the things that really changed the way I work now is that I'm less about using this super technique or some sort of crazy thing. I'm about working with the individual in front of me and allowing them to see through the psychological illusions that hold their particular problem in place. It's less about putting suggestions in the subconscious and working in that model no longer holds water for me. I'm more about seeing things insightfully in the moment and moving forward, you know.
Well, it's
so that's
it's very intriguing. Like the higher level, like you look at I don't know, I think it's Virginia Satir and Milton Erickson, and these people, even though they approach it from such different angles, the hypnosis and the hypnotic language, and you know, Milton being very vague, you know, with his suggestion, and or I can't remember which is which, but one of them is very specific, you know, very precise, and the other one's very vague with it. But it's more and more the trance is putting people in an experience of the present moment. It's like putting them in an experience of what is happening right now and being receptive to sensations happening as they're occurring, sense the present moment or actuality or reality as it's happening. And
and they were both geniuses.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's very, it seems like that's the experience that you're coming to. And I get the similar effect from listening to and interacting with Jamie, actually, is reading, especially. He's got a book called Clarity. I'm sure you've probably got into it. And it has that same effect. Eckhart Tolle has a similar effect when they're expressing themselves and communicating their particles of information and whatever it is they want to communicate. It has this effect of you pay attention, you know, and attention being presence, it being that mindfulness. You're ready to absorb and experience whatever is coming at you, and that alertness, I think there's power in that, and it allows people to have an aha moment. That's why I love Qigong. That's why I love mindfulness. That's why I love anything that allows you to get back into the now, because having that experience yourself, you can't You can't just go here, have some presents. You know, you know, like people have to experience of
go to the pharmacy. Yeah, you go to the pharmacy and buy a kilo of presents. You know, people would. Hey, look, if you could bottle it and sell it, it would be the greatest thing in the world. But the fact is, you don't need to buy it because it's already who you are.
Yeah.
You know.
Is there some kind of takeaways, like simple practices that you share, that you find yourself sharing a lot with people? Like, you know, you work one-on-one with people. I don't know, if say you work with 100 people, maybe there's this kind of idea, principle, or a technique, simple thing that you could do in a few seconds, a couple of minutes, that you find yourself over and over again repeating, that you could share with us here, so people can actually have a practical, experience of what we're talking about at home.
Sure. So there's a great technique that comes from mindfulness, cognitive-based therapy, and this goes to the heart of what we're talking about. And it's a technique, but if you do it enough, it just becomes part of your being. And you can look. The acronym is SOBER, and basically you stop. So when you find yourself in an unhelpful pattern of thinking, feeling, doing something that is not aligned with who you want to be.
So for an example, it might be biting the fingernails or something like this.
Biting the fingernails is a good example. So you're on the bus, and you're like thinking about how am I gonna pay those bills or whatever, and you're worrying, and there's a physical response, and you find yourself gnawing at your nail. And if it's a pattern and you're just running it, then you've already bitten off half of your thumb and done deal. But if you notice, wow, okay, I'm doing this, and I don't want to be doing this, so you stop. You can envision it as big, bright letters. Stop, like a neon sign. Stop, in your mind. Boom, and a voice, stop. And you observe. You simply bring your attention to whatever it is you're experiencing.
So what are you observing? Are you observing the stop sign? Are you observing the voice? Are you observing the fingernail? Are you observing the feeling? What are you observing?
The stop sign is optional, but you just stop whatever you're doing, and you can either bring your attention to whatever it is you find yourself doing. So if you're reaching for that cigarette and you're smoking it and you don't want to be smoking, actually put your attention on bringing that smoke into your lungs. You're hurting yourself. But if you're doing it unconsciously, it feels like it's something you want to do. But if you really, really bring your attention to it, you'll notice that it's actually uncomfortable.
Constriction of the lung, like
the constriction.
Yeah.
So you just bring your awareness. You observe. You simply observe.
So you observe your own. You bring your awareness inward and into what you're experiencing on a physical level, or emotional, or mental as well, or mainly the body.
Or mental, emotional, moral, whatever it is. If you're just aware, you're having that sense of observing that there is an I that is objectifying in a way. The subject and object relationship with whatever it is that's going on. So even if it's a concept, even if it's like a moral thing where I'm doing something which is against my better judgment, it's not a physical thing, I cannot observe it, but you're observing it. Yeah. So you're aware of it. And then you breathe, and so you actually bring your attention in your body, and you actually breathe that air, that clear air, that light of consciousness. And you expand your awareness. You expand your awareness to beyond what beyond your breath, beyond simply that observing sense. And then you respond mindfully, and you respond in a way that is um, most aligned with where you want to be. So it's sober. It's stop, observe, breathe, expand, and respond.
Excellent. So that could all happen in a matter of a few seconds, right? I can imagine that happening with one breath almost. As you stop, you observe for maybe half an hour, maybe breathe for one breath, and then expand with the out breath, and then respond after that. It could literally take one breath.
Exactly. It sounds like there's a lot of moving parts, but you know, in reality, it's an insight. And as Jamie always says, you know, an insight happens in a second, in a moment. And those life-changing realizations happen in a moment. You have to be on point, you know. So
excellent.
Yeah, that's a great technique.
I like it.
People
I like it a lot. Yeah, it's right. Like, how long does it take to make a life-changing transformation? You know, like, you're like, oh, it took me 10 weeks to lose this amount of weight, or it took me, you know, a year to set up my business. So it's like, really, that happened in that moment that you decided to, right?
Absolutely.
And any other ones that you find yourself sharing? That's an excellent one. Thanks for sharing that. Is there any other little tidbits that you find yourself repeating often?
Yeah. So if you find yourself suffering and you're noticing that resistance that we talked about, the resistance of life, and it's really, really useful to look at the language that you're using internally and looking specifically at your musts and your shoulds and imperative language. So language that, you know, things must be a certain way. Things should be a certain way. And so what you'll do is you'll actually realize that it's called masturbation, you know, or shooting on yourself, you know, it's really, things should be a certain way, things must be a certain way, and which you create that resistance and you lose the flow and you lose your connection. So an example might be, you know, everybody must treat me with respect. And when people don't treat me with respect, then, you know, I will get angry. And you have that anger response. That's a, you know, somebody steps up and, whoops. Yeah, there you go. Oh shit, that shouldn't have happened. I should have been more mindful.
Here I am talking about mindfulness.
And so what happens, the anger response is less about an unconscious thing that's, you know, you have to change. It's simply a thought that, you know, things must be a certain way, have to be a certain way, and you respond to that. And so when, for example, if someone is showing you disrespect, seemingly showing you disrespect, you know, your response is not, it's not about the circumstances. It's about your thinking about the circumstances. And we are never upset. I think it was Marcus Aurelius or Seneca, one of the Stoic sages, the Greek Roman Stoic sages, that said, you know, we are never upset by our circumstances, but our thinking about them. And, you know, that's really, really important. So imperative language. Notice when you're masturbating or shooting on yourself.
Pay attention to your shooting.
And you'll notice keep the shooting for for somewhere else,
for the appropriate time and a place. And that sort of that triggered in my mind this idea of good and bad, and yeah, people, myself included, everyone included in this, is taking a side of deciding how something is, deciding, oh, this is beneficial or this is detrimental, or deciding that this is going to be good for me. Yes, this is going to be good, or that reacting in such a way or responding in such a way that says, I want this, or, the aversion and the clinging idea. And what has been your experience with, this good and bad idea and deciding that something is wanted or unwanted? And how have you best navigated these kind of ideas for the, for your own benefit and for the benefit of others who you work with as well?
Well, as you say, it's really something that we get caught in time and time again. And what seems like a really great idea one day, looks like a really bad idea. And that's based on our moment by moment experience. So if you find yourself drawn to something or feeling averse to doing something, and I speak only for myself in this sense, it's like is noticing your feelings about it, and noticing that there's information in that, there's data in that feeling, but the data is not telling you about the thing. The data is not telling you, the feelings don't know anything about the future. They don't know anything about the past. They don't know really. They're just moment by moment feedback of where your thinking is at and what you're currently believing about what is good or bad or right and wrong, or right and wrong for you, right and wrong for the world, right and wrong for things that I thought were so important in my life have really ceased to have any importance, and things that I thought were absolutely unimportant and even trite and silly and are really, really, really important. So I think, and I'm paraphrasing here, but I think it was Carl Jung that said something along, or Maslow, one of those guys, said that don't let what was important in the morning of your life be what is important in the evening of your life, in the afternoon. There's a different need and different sense based on where you're going, and what's important, what's true, and what's good for you is, and this may sound a little bit cuckoo, but it should be based on your deepest love for yourself, your deepest wish for your well-being, and
you're not shitting on yourself right there.
When you're not shitting on yourself, I really do believe that we are looking for that inner peace, that love, that love that we are, but that we can develop by our focus and our intention. And I believe that the so-called worst people in the world are also looking for that. How do I know that? Because they're human, and they're really, really tricked by their misunderstanding of how life works. And so they will go out and try and change things on the outside, and do their best to make people act in a certain way so that they can feel a certain way, whatever that is. And whether that's really people that think that hurting someone or raping someone or sexually, acting inappropriate with someone, they believe that that's going to give them something. They're not aware of it. And we see this now a lot in I saw your post some days ago about a friend of yours that had a run-in, sort of unfortunate experience with somebody, was harassing her sexually, and I just feel compassion for everybody involved. There's a clear line that you have to take, of course. She's lucky that she has a friend like you and she could call and but you have to take a clear line, but you have to also understand, people do things because they are doing the best they can with what their current level of understanding of how things work. And so if you want a better experience of life or a better life, whatever that is, working on your understanding of how things work, your grounding, which is how Jamie puts it, is the place to go. So focus less on techniques or things. If those make sense to you, then use them, and rather, really work on simplifying your experience of life by grounding and noticing those areas of your life where you think things are right, you think things are wrong, and really questioning that and allowing yourself to say, wow, this made a difference. This made a tangible difference. I did it again.
100%. I think that's an exclamation point there. The couple of things came up as you were sharing just then, and it's a question I have just really to put out there. Is like, so from your experience, you've seen and witnessed that, like, I sort of went on a conversation within your conversation as you were talking, and in my mind, and I was thinking about this concept of emotions and the emotional communication process of emotions being a communication, I'm imagining like a cup and a string and then a cup and like experience over here coming in, and emotions being this kind of communicator, and then we get to understand the communication through the emotion. And it's a very primitive explanation, and so there's people who can't see the screen, so I'm like, I've got a cup in one hand imagining a string connecting the cups. I'm not reaching in my other hand, and it's approaching the side of the screen, and there's inputs, like sensory input from one side of the cup, moves through the string and communicates to my perceptive ability, and then that communication happening. So I'm questioning during what you were sharing, if this emotion, this faculty of emotion, this phenomenon of emotion has generally been good or loving. So it's like, hasn't an ill intent, or it hasn't, like you mentioned that, everyone's are where they at because they've got a certain set of experience and tools that they have that allows them to have an understanding of experience. And so it's like almost presupposing or supposing that this emotive faculty, the emotion, doesn't actually have an agenda, or doesn't have an outcome that it wants, that it doesn't care about the past or the future. It's like, it just is going, yep, this is what's happening. I'm going to fire off a bunch of chemicals that allow you to feel a certain way, and then you can sort of make your mind up what you want to do with that. Because having this conversation with some people who are like, well, what does it all mean? I start asking these questions. what does it all mean? Life, there's no purpose to life. It's just we all just born, and then the world's fucked, and you know, who cares what happens? You know, like this kind of either pessimism or nihilism, or you know, and yeah, what do you? Yeah, that just was an idea that came to me. I guess what is your take on that little conversation I had within yours?
I emotion, as I said, you know, there's information in the feelings, in the emotion, and really the information is guiding you as to the content of your thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can tell whether your thinking is in a loving place, is in a fearful place, based on the feelings, based on what's showing up in the moment. And that shifts. We are, you know, we go up and we go down, and you know, people talk about, yeah, so you should do this technique to change your emotions, and you should do this, you know, and it's good to be able to go into certain situations and not having really powerful, overwhelming emotional responses. And there's absolutely things that you can do, absolutely, in my experience, to do that. And if that makes sense to you, then do that, by all means. But emotions are motivators. So if you're having there's no such thing as a bad emotion. There's no such thing as a negative emotion. That's a misunderstanding. There's just information. And so it's if you're feeling shitty in a job and you're like, man, I hate this job, and then you're like, then some comes along, this coach, and this says, no, man, you gotta change your thinking, man, and you gotta like change how you feel, and they give you some super technique, and you're like tapping and doing all this crazy stuff, and trying to change your emotion. And maybe what you need to do is just stay in the job, or you could leave the job. You could transition. There's a billion of options you could do, and the information that you're experiencing, or the emotions you're experiencing, is just telling you that your thinking is around this particular situation is perhaps not so grounded in reality. It's not reflecting the way things are. So it's simply not aligned with the way things are. I love fear. The fear response has allowed my ancestors to run away from, like, you know, tigers.
Here, right? Wouldn't if not for fear, we would not be here.
Exactly. So, you know, nothing wrong with that. So, but unnecessary, irrational fears need to be questioned. So if your fear of
speaking in front of these group of
I'm afraid of beautiful women. I'm afraid of beautiful women. I'm afraid of those creatures that will make me feel uncomfortable. No, that's an irrational fear. They're human, and just like everyone else. And there's no need to have an irrational fear in front of a crowd of people, you know, and because all that's in your head. And there are very, very good ways of working with people, coaches, and people that can insightfully help you see that for yourself in very clear, conscious way without having to change any of that. And what I find is that when you do that, those emotions go away by themselves. And they reflect where your thinking is at. And we all get caught. I have to add that last bit there, because it sounds like, yo, man,
nobody's immune.
You know, it's part of the game. And you can feel really up and down, and and just realize that don't forget to build into your conception of life, because it's already there, but build into your idea the fact that you are resilient and that you can do it because you made it. You made it this far.
Won the lottery, as Gary Vee calls it. Won the lottery of the universe.
Yeah, right.
Out of the billions, hundreds of millions of swimming little creatures that were going for the egg, you're the one that made it, so you won the lottery. That's enough to be grateful for in itself, right?
Indeed.
What about some emergency stuff? I know sober's one. I know we're not always going to be in a sober enough state to remember to be sober and react with that. What about emergencies if I'm feeling like I'm ready to end it all, jump in front of a train, jump off a cliff, and nobody likes me. I'm a burden to society. It would be better off if this is all too hard. I can't deal with the emotions and the ups and the downs. It's all, do you have anything to speak on? Yeah, like kind of emergency, kind of get out of depression or get out of anxiety free card. Like.
So it all depends on the level of awareness and the consciousness that you have in the moment. And unfortunately, I've lost people that I respect and care about to suicide. I've lost a couple good friends.
Likewise, yeah, that's why I'm touching on it.
And it's one of the saddest things because you know that this individual had so much potential, not just potential, like who they already were, like was
vibrant, vibrant, dynamic, amazing, incredible, so on and so forth.
Amazing people. And usually those people are the people that feel deeply and get to and also suffer more. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're thinking telling you stuff that has nothing to do with the way things work, which is essentially coming down to that same point again. And you can't realize that insight happens in an instant. So I can't tell you the times that I've spoken to people that they were like, and I was about to, grab that can of petrol and go over and burn down that guy's house, and and then I went, maybe this is not a good idea.
Time for a sober thought, I think, right about now.
And or some variation of that, or even like my life, my life is in a certain way, and I'm gonna drink, or I'm going to take drugs again, when that hasn't been a strategy that works for you. I would say realize that insight. So you don't want to get into a situation where your techniques don't work for you, but inevitably you will, because these are just scaffolding to actually help you really, really go deep and see things as they are. And so realize that those voices, that thought, if you have a little bit of awareness and that you haven't actually taken that step, jumped, or had that drink or whatever, and realize that feeling that you're having has nothing to do with you. It has no reflection to do with who you really are. And beyond that thought is freedom. So if it's a suicide thought, it's a suicide thought. That's what it is. It's a thought. It's the same, it's built of the same material that I'm in love with you is built of.
Same stuff.
Not the same quality, not the same quality. Certainly not. Because love is much more in tune with reality and how things really are. And destruction is, self-destruction is not. Because, you know, who are you destroying? When you kill yourself, you want to kill yourself. But if there isn't any self to kill, then you're heading down la la land. You're you know, and so what you want to do is really notice that that information, that feeling, you know, realize that you don't have to act on it, because it's not telling you anything about yourself. It's telling you about where your thinking is at. And so if you find yourself, I mean, this is why I think it's very, very useful to work on grounding and work doing things and living in a way that you don't find yourself in that situation. You know, and I don't mean, you know, everybody has, you know, it's paradoxical that you find yourself in this situation where you most need it and you haven't been doing it, you know. And so it's like when I think of the rich get richer, I think of people that spend more time in the present moment, connecting with truth and love, get to have their cake and eat it too. You know, you get richer, and so deepening your understanding of how things work and how your mind works, and being really clear, and having a clear mind helps. So not drinking too much, or not, you know, not shooting yourself in the foot in the first place. And it's easier said than done for some people, and for everyone, you know. But I would say that
don't make it harder for yourself. Life's hard enough as it is. We don't need these extra weight carrying along with us.
Exactly.
The vices, it's you know, breathing's a vice enough, you know.
I mean, I found that useful. And the emergency thing is one of those things where practice. I do believe in practice, and I do believe in practice makes perfect. But not only practice makes perfect, perfect practice makes perfect. So, you know, do those little things, do them well. Don't try to be perfect, but do it as perfectly as you can, and you know, and you will find yourself in that situation, and those resources will be there for you.
What little things are we talking about specifically?
So, part of my own personal practice, I teach self-hypnosis. I teach some of the tools that have helped me, and I teach them clinically in clinical things to my clients, and I teach them to friends. I teach them to
anyone who listen.
Anyone who listen. And it's different from meditation, because this is really, you know, being able to access the deeper structures of your deeper mind, and so practicing the small things. Don't go for the big things. You know, make sure you have your basics. You know, Pablo Casals, the great Catalonian cellist, famous cellist, well known worldwide, he was, and he got invited to go play in like Carnegie Hall or something, and they said, oh, master, come and we'll pay for your flight, and you come over and play for us. And he said, oh, that's great, I'll do that, but I'm gonna have to take a boat, take a boat. And they're like, what are you talking about? Why don't you just jump on the plane? And he's like, well, the problem is that if I jump on the plane, there's going to be a layover. I'm going to have to spend a day somewhere and then travel, and I won't be able to practice. And, if I don't practice my scales, I'm going to be able to, notice, and I'm going to have to practice every day. And then when I get to New York, I'm going to have to start again from the very beginning. And you go, oh, okay, and so practice the basics, practice the very, very basics. And easier said than done. We have these big visions for ourselves and our lives. But
again, like basics as in breathing, observing, like hygiene stuff, taking a shower, taking a step, walking, talking, like this stuff. Like, what are we talking about when you say basics?
Movement. Yeah, absolutely. And those basic things to life. We're living, breathing creatures that need to move and need to touch and
practice smelling, practice listening, practice seeing, stuff like this. The foundational stuff.
Sure, and then don't turn it into a practice. Be it, like don't turn that into another idea of how you should be. Really realize that just sitting is the greatest form of meditation. It's just being. If you can sit and just experience what you're experiencing without overlaying anything on it and thinking about unnecessary stuff, you're meditating. And you can do that sitting on a bus. Any experience can be a meditational. In fact, is.
And the amount of times people come, because I'm often I do sit doing seated meditation, but what I teach is qigong and standing meditation and movement meditation. And the amount of people who just like, I'll go, we're just going to stand here for 5 minutes. Well, just and people just get like, we're just going to stand here. And the amount of people who struggle to do that, just standing there is incredible. So you're right in that anything can be, an opportunity to bring awareness to what's happening, to the experience.
And especially those circumstances in your life that you feel like are out of control, and we all have them, and some of them can be really, really trying. But those are the perfect places for spiritual practice. It's not in some little room somewhere in a cave, with your incense and your perfect candles, and it's right in the midst of the worst disease, or
the crises,
or even making love.
Even the good stuff. So while we have a bunch of listeners and ears and eyes on us, care to share some self-hypnosis 101 basics that people can take with them?
Sure. So, as long as you're not in driving heavy machinery and, flying a plane, or stick it on autopilot for a moment. And what you can do is just allow your eyes to close. And as you notice your physical sense, you focus all your awareness on your right hand. And notice and become aware of that feeling of that right hand as it rests in your lap. And in your mind, you can just tell your right hand, just imagine that you could tell your right hand to relax. And imagine it almost as if you're dropping a pebble in a lake, or perhaps putting a message in a bottle and sending it out into the ocean. And just relax. And just relax that hand. And notice that relaxation. Perhaps it's a corner of that hand, perhaps it's the weight, perhaps it's the warmth that tells you first that that hand is relaxing. And as you notice that, recognize that for this moment, that relaxation happened within you, started within you, within your mind, in your intention. And that the more that you allow your physical body to participate in that relaxation, that being present, this moment, this present that you were given, this gift, the more your life will begin to reflect reality. And your thinking will reflect the life that is true for you and true in this moment. And you don't even have to think about it, because your hand is always in the present moment. Your right hand knows more about reality than those stories in your head. Even the most beautiful, majestic story will fall when it comes to the sensation, your right hand relaxing. And so as you relax your body, you can relax ideas that you have about yourself and things and ways you want and you should. And just allow a natural flow to open for you. And let life surprise you. And surprise yourself. And so throughout the day, you can find yourself bringing that attention back into that hand that's gripping, holding life in a loving, tender, open awareness. And make sure not to hold life too tightly. Because, when you hold things too tightly, it's really hard to let them go. And so as you find yourself more and more able to hold those things lightly, letting go becomes easier and easier for you. And the wonderful feeling of flow and openness and clarity is your true nature. And so the more you connect with that, the easier it will be for you to be who you are. Becoming. And just bring yourself back to the room. Onward and upward.
Excelente. Thank you so much. Thank you kindly. This is going to be the pimp slap hand now. Relax.
Relax. relax. Yeah, right?
Relax and enjoy yourself. This is two of the most profound pieces of advice I've ever received. Is number one, relax. Number two, enjoy yourself. Number two, enjoy. Number three, yourself. Thank you so much for your time. I could talk for days about this stuff, but I'm going to have to wrap it up. I have to go catch an airplane back home, so I'm mindful of that. But we can continue this conversation.
I love that. That sounds wonderful.
In the future, for sure. So thanks for sharing so much time and energy with us this morning, and for introducing yourself to the Flow fam. Is there one little piece that is coming through? Say you were on your deathbed and you could only share one thing, a culmination of all your learnings, that you've imagine all that have disappeared, there's nothing left of what you've created in the world, and you want to just leave us with one thing. What would that be?
So beyond everything that you've thought about yourself, that you think about yourself in the present moment, and even the sensations and the things that are showing up, you are. You are that presence, that experiences. And in fact, you are beyond that. And beyond even that. And beyond even that. And so there's nothing to worry about.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ryan. I thoroughly appreciate you and look forward to chatting again sometime soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, my friend.
Have an amazing day.
Yes, you too.
We'll definitely tune in soon. Until next time, guys, keep the flow growing and the growth flowing.